Thanks, Bill. Welcome to Ames, Iowa, on the campus of Iowa State University and the Republican presidential debate. Our event is being sponsored by Fox News and the Washington Examiner in conjunction with the Iowa Republican Party. We've been seeing, obviously, on Fox News Channel, being streamed on foxnews.com. You can log on and check out how you can react to our debate. We're also being heard on Fox News Radio. And these folks in the stadium, in the studio, are just fired up, as you can hear. Okay. Now let's meet the candidates. Former Senator Rick Santorum, businessman Herman Cain, Congressman Ron Paul, former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney, Congresswoman Michele Bachmann, former Minnesota Governor Tim Pawlenty, former Utah Governor John Huntsman, and former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich. Joining me at the desk tonight, my Fox News colleague and anchor of Fox News Sunday, Chris Wallace, and from the Washington Examiner, Byron York and Susan Ferruccio. We're gathered tonight at a very unsettling moment for Americans. We've watched the stock market on a wild roller coaster ride this week as people are anxiously tracking their balances in their retirement accounts and college funds. About 14 million people don't have a job tonight, and millions more have given up looking or have taken part-time work to try to scrape by. The nation's credit rating was downgraded for the first time in history as we try to get a handle on the country's skyrocketing debt. And just last weekend in Afghanistan, more American lives were lost than on any other day in this decade-long conflict. So tonight, we are respectfully asking you, the candidates, to try to put aside the talking points, to try to put aside the polished lines that get applause on the campaign trail here in Iowa and around the country, and to level with the American people, to speak from the heart about how you would navigate this country through the challenges America faces. So let's begin. Congresswoman Bachmann, you say you can turn the economy around within 1 quarter by cutting taxes, reducing spending, and repealing the health care law. In fact, this week you said, quote, "It isn't that difficult," and, quote, "solutions aren't that tough to figure out." Isn't it unrealistic to suggest that something as massive and complex as the U.S. economy can rebound in just 3 months?
We can start to see recovery within 3 months, not the whole recovery, but we can begin to see it if we put into place what we know to be true. Number one, we should not have increased the debt ceiling. In the last 2 months, I was leading on the issue of not increasing the debt ceiling. That turned out to be the right answer. And this is part of the movement that we're seeing all across the country. I've been leading that movement. I've been giving it voice. And it's not just Republicans. It's disaffected Democrats, it's independents, it's libertarians, all coming together, apolitical people, because 2 days from now, Brett, we get to send a message to Barack Obama, and the message is this: you are finished in 2012, and you will be a one-term president.
Governor Romney, Congresswoman Bachmann says she can start to turn the economy around in 3 months. How long would it take you?
Well, I'm not going to give you an exact time frame, but I can tell you this, that if you spend your life in the private sector and you understand how jobs come and how they go, you understand that what President Obama has done is the exact opposite of what the economy needed to be done. Almost every action he took made it harder for entrepreneurs to build businesses, for banks to make loans, for businesses to hire and to build more capital. What needs to be done, there are really 7 things that come to mind. 1 is to make sure our corporate tax rates are competitive with other nations. Number 2 is to make sure that our regulations and bureaucracy works not just for the bureaucrats in Washington, but for the businesses that are trying to grow. Number 3 is to have trade policies that work for us, not just for our opponents. Number 4 is to have an energy policy that gets us energy secure. Number 5 is to have the rule of law. 6 great institutions that build human capital, because capitalism is also about people, not just capital and physical goods. And number 7 is to have a government that doesn't spend more money than it takes in, and I'll do it.
Governor Romney, you mentioned leadership on the economy. You are the front runner in this GOP field. Yet when it came to weighing in on the debt ceiling deal in Congress, something that had a major impact on the economy, many on this stage say you were missing in action. Some columnists even said you were in the Mitt protection program. Then just hours before the House voted, you released a statement saying you could not support the bill. Is that leadership?
You know, this is a critical issue, which is how big is the government going to be? Back in the days of John F. Kennedy, the federal government took up, along with the state and local governments, 27% of the economy. Today, government consumes 37% of the economy. We're inches away from no longer having a free economy. And so this was a critical issue, and therefore, well before the debate got pushed along, I signed a pledge saying I would not raise the debt ceiling unless we had cut, cap, and balance. And that is the view I took on June 30th, and I reiterated that throughout the process, and frankly, all the way to the very end.
Just so everyone knows, when candidates go over the allotted time, they've agreed to this system, that's what you hear, the bell, and we'll try to not ring the bell that much. It's not the doorbell. So to be clear, and just to be clear here, you echoed Congresswoman Bachmann and Congressman Paul in being against that final compromise deal. So to phrase it another way, if you were president, you would have vetoed that bill?
Look, I'm not going to eat Barack Obama's dog food, all right? What he served up was not what I would have done if I'd have been president of the United States.
I know, but that bill was the deal on the table, Governor.
If I'd have been, well, I'm not president now, though I'd like to have been. If I were president, what I would have done is cut federal spending, capped federal spending as a percentage of the total economy, and then worked for a balanced budget amendment. If we do that, then we can rein back the scale of government, and that's the right thing to do. And that's what I said is that in June 30th.
Okay. Congressman Paul, as you know, when Standard & Poor's downgraded the country's credit rating last week, one of the reasons S&P listed was because of partisan gridlock in Washington. Congressman, what specific things would you do as president to increase growth, calm the markets, create jobs that could pass through a divided Congress?
Well, they didn't downgrade it mainly because they couldn't come to a conclusion. They couldn't come to a conclusion because they didn't know what was going on. The country's bankrupt and nobody wanted to admit it. And when you're bankrupt, you can't keep spending. And all these proposed cuts weren't cuts at all. What you have to do is restore sound money. You have to understand why you have a business cycle, why you have booms and busts. If you don't do that, there's no way you can solve this problem. And the booms and busts comes from a failed monetary system. The interest rates that are way lower than they should be encourages malinvestment and debt. And to get out of that, all this other tinkering, you cannot do that unless you liquidate debt. You don't bail out the people that are bankrupt and dump the debt on the people. That is what's happened. So you have to allow liquidation of debt, eliminate the malinvestment, then you go back and you can get growth again by having a better tax structure, lower taxes, invite capital back into this country, get a lot less regulations, and under those conditions, you can have growth again.
And you can get it through a divided Congress.
Well, the divided Congress will exist for a long time to come. Yes, you would have to get it through a divided Congress. But the one thing is, if you approach it constitutionally, if you approach it on the principles of liberty, you can bring people together. If we have to cut, maybe we wouldn't be so determined that you can't cut one nickel out of the militarism around the world. Neither the Democrats or the Republicans want to cut that. So if you want to cut, you have to put the militarism on the table as well.
Mr. Cain. Welcome back to the Stevens Auditorium on the campus of Iowa State University. Our next round is a lightning round really quick before we get into foreign policy and national security. Are we actually missing a candidate on the stage? We are. She'll be right back. Congresswoman Bachmann. There she is. That's okay. Okay. There we go. Texas Governor Rick Perry obviously is not here tonight. He's giving a speech on Saturday in South Carolina. We're told he's getting into this race, but he's not answering questions tonight. He's not taking part in the straw poll on Saturday. So is he outsmarting you? 30 seconds, Congressman Paul.
Maybe he didn't want to face up to the